Thank you, Michael Goldstein, and thank you, Jules Trump, for the invitation. Jules, thank you. Everybody say good morning to Jules Trump. Well, oh God, can you raise the expectations a little higher? No, thank you, Jules, and listen, a big hand to Mr. Trump. I mean, a lot of us in this room have made some money vis-a-vis commissions because of a little property in Aventura called Williams Island, and the property here on Sunny Isles Beach, which had transformed or began the transformation of the changing skyline of Sunny Isles Beach. And that was Mr. Jules Trump. So how about a nice round of applause for a, it's a lifetime of work, and it's extraordinary work, and we've all benefited from it. So Jules, just keep the party going, please. Thank you. On behalf of everybody here. And with young Michael, I'm sure you can. So thanks everybody for the invitation. Michael and Jules, thank you. For those of you I don't know me, I'm Craig Studnicky. I have been living here in South Florida for 30 years. Came here from New Jersey. Like so many, I got divorced 30 years ago and said, oh, I guess I'm going to move to Florida and sell real estate. Now, there's an unusual story, huh? The thing is, I actually came here for a season to work with a selling season, like a December through like an April, to work with a former boss of Michael Goldstein of mine, a guy named Tom Daly, who developed Mystic Point and a lot of stuff down on South Beach and nearly half of the high-rise condos that Related ever built. Tom passed away, unfortunately, 7 years ago, and when that happened, real estate lost a huge brain and a terrific guy. I mean, he could be socially a little weird sometimes, but if he liked you, he was extraordinary and indeed a great mentor. But what happened to me is I stayed. I came here for a season. And I'm from New Jersey, and it was freezing cold, and it was February of whatever year. I think it was 1990 now. I round off. I'm in sales, 29 years, so I'm in, call it 30. And I said, there's just no way. I'm going back and suffering another Northeast winter. The Miami Heat had just come into existence. I think the Heat was like 2 or 3 years old. And South Beach, I lived here in the early 80s when South Beach was a dangerous place to live. They filmed the movie Scarface there because they could. Why? Because there was nobody living in South Beach then. So you could drive cars around and have gun scenes and just do anything you wanted in South Beach. Nobody was there. But it changed in early 1990. You could feel the buzz. South Beach was now where all the modeling agencies were. And real estate was getting bought and sold and bought like nuts. And you could just feel the change in the air. And so I decided, the hell with this, I'm staying. And about 25 years ago or so, with Tom Daly's blessing, I left Tom Daly and started a company called International Sales Group, ISG. We are primarily a sales company that real estate developers hire to help manage their sales. That's basically it. Along the way, because this is life, I guess I got kind of friendly with the people from Related. And about 8 years ago, they asked me to start a company with them called Related ISG, which is a general real estate company. The trick there was finding somebody that could manage it. And I don't know where Alex Vidal is. I know I saw him when I walked in here this morning, but he's somewhere here. There he's in the back, being very humble, very modest. But Alex joined us about 4 years ago. 5, excuse me. Seems like yesterday. He's turned it into 6 offices with 500 agents. And anyway, whatever. I guess I'm the CEO of that company as well. Alex is the president. So what does all that mean? That means I guess I've been here for 30 years. I guess it means I understand what developers think about. I understand what you all think about as general realtors because I am one. I'm a licensed real estate broker. And what we do at ISG, we simply try to share the information that we learn along the way with our colleagues, gratis, free. I'm not expecting you to sell Miami the way we at ISG sell it. I'm just hoping that with the facts, you can neutralize or actually turn around what's not out there right now. And what's not out there right now is any sense of urgency from your buyers. Fair enough? Any. And so much of it, believe me, I know, I'm playing, in addition to my CEO role, I guess I'm playing director of sales lately, waiting for Raquel Kaufman. She's so slow sometimes, to join me at Brickell City Center. So until she gets there, I'm the sales director at Brickell City Center. So I'm actually on the front lines, closing deals, saying hello to people in all kinds of different languages and styles and customs, and trying to get them to make a decision is unbelievably hard. Unbelievably hard. In my 30-some year, no, I've been doing this for 40 years. Been owned ISG for 25, lived here for 30. Never seen anything like this. Because you could understand why things were a little bit slow in 2008 and 2009, if any of you were around in 2008 and 2009, because we had our 1929. That's what 2008 was. Except the amount of transactions that took, forget about 08, we call that an aberration, a blip on the screen. But 2009, that's when the dust settled. That's what gave rise to our Miami report. And that's when we went back out to see just how bad it really was based on all the data we were getting from companies like CNN and the New York Times. Yeah, there were about 10 times as many transactions that were written in 2009 than 2019. About 10 times as many transactions. Real estate was trading like crazy here in Miami. And circumstances were a little bit funky. We were just coming out of 2008. The Standard & Poor's reduced the credit rating of the United States. This is kind of a big deal to me because I was born and raised here, from AAA, which is about as good as it gets, to AA. And as a result of that, the US dollar plummeted in value. There was no mortgage money in the United States. Remember that? None. It wasn't just about Miami. I mean, I see Q Capital is here, but you know perfectly well there was no mortgage money available in 2009 because you couldn't get a fair appraisal from an appraiser no matter what you did. And you can't get a mortgage without a decent appraisal. And we were living at the time in, I guess, what we call a falling knife environment. Prices are going down. No one wants to catch a falling knife. So you couldn't get the appraisers to step up. So consequently, there was no mortgage money. And still, 10 times as many transactions in 2009 as now. Unemployment in 2009. The official rate was close to 12%. 12%. The unofficial rate was close to 20. 1 out of 5 people in the United States were out of work. It was bad, and still 10 times as many transactions. So you didn't have a U.S. market for 2 reasons. People like me, I was traumatized from 08. I wasn't spending any money on anything except dry cleaning. I wasn't doing a thing, and I know I wasn't alone. That was one problem. Number 2, we buy with mortgages, don't we? Because we get a beautiful tax write-off from the interest, at least particularly if you're underneath the $20,000 limit, whatever it may be, we still enjoy tax benefits from a mortgage. Well, without mortgages, you're not buying. And yet all that real estate in 09 and 10 was being bought and sold at a rate 10 times faster than now, mostly from South America. We didn't have perfect conditions at all. We had a weak dollar. We had a stronger U.S., South American economies, but terrible here in the U.S. And still we performed like magic. Explain this year then. Explain this year. You're dealing with super low unemployment, super low mortgage rates, mortgage money available everywhere, and yet we're 1/10 the volume of 09. No urgency out there. Well, I'm here to tell you what we do at ISG to try to change that conversation. That's what I'm here to do today. I have a feeling that the people at the estates at Acqualina are already figuring that out because I've been hearing from way too many people that $60 million in 60 days rather, just took place here, which without a doubt, Michael, makes you the best-selling project in South Florida right now. Without a doubt it does. And deservedly so. Ever since you started putting building your what is it, the South Tower or the North Tower, and those columns were coming up. I live down the street at Ocean 2, so I drive by this building all the time, and architecturally, it's beyond impressive. But I know you didn't do it just because of the columns. It was a hell of a lot of hard work. And it also could be a good omen for what's coming. It could be a good omen for what's coming. So with that said, I'm going to walk you through what I walk everybody through at ISG, which are numbers. It's called the Miami Report. Some of you have been to these presentations before. And if you have, I'm liable to be a little repetitive. I only need like 20, 25 minutes of your time this morning. But I promise you when you leave, you'll be a lot more informed than you were when you woke up this morning. And you'll be a lot more able to close real estate and more particularly instill some urgency out there. Not some with one group. It's our buyers. It's not the brokers. Listen, I represent Related. I represent PMG. I represent Swire down on Brickell Avenue. And they all complain, bitch about the same thing. We need more sales. Yeah, I know. And you got to get on those brokers. No, it's not the brokers. The brokers are frustrated. They want to close business as badly as you do. You're wrong. It's the buyers out there. There's this ridiculous lethargy out there and a lack of urgency. And what I learn more and more and more, no matter where I go, it always seems to be about the lack of information or the misinformation pertaining to Miami. So I'm going to give you a lot of facts today. I'm not here to do Anthony Robbins. I'm here to load you up with some data that you can use to change the conversation with your clients that I can assure you are completely misinformed. Here's an example of why. I don't know if any of you read The Real Deal, though I suspect most of you do. This is this morning, having my lovely cup of coffee, thinking about joining Jules Trump and Michael Goldstein over here today. And I read Miami. This is Real Deal, the first thing this morning. Miami among most at-risk cities for falling home prices during the next recession. You saw this lovely thing too. And here we go again. I mean, Miami, I don't know what it is about us. They love to pick on Miami. And this is Real Deal, which is kind of homegrown in Miami in a way. And so it says home prices in Miami fell sharply after the financial crisis. This is '08. This is '08. So we're going back 11 years now, this morning. 11 years this morning. I guess because they knew I was coming. I don't know why. Buyers and investors took on loads of debt and could no longer meet the payments. As another potential downturn approaches, Miami faces similar problems. Paragraph 1 is completely wrong. Completely wrong. If you were selling real estate in the first decade of this century, the year 2000 to right through 2008, because you didn't do anything in 2008, right up until then, you were selling pre-construction probably with 10% down a contract, 10% when the developer breaks ground, and Nancy will see the rest at closing, right? 80% at closing. And, is this a great country or what? If you buy this contract at pre-construction, we'll let you flip it before closing. Remember that song? That was beautiful, wasn't it? I sang it as well as anybody. Buyer A sold to buyer B, and if we were lucky, buyer B found a buyer C. The problem was accounting for all of this. You had to get MBAs to model this stuff because the salespeople got lost in about 5 seconds. The MBAs could sort of kind of track it, and it was working beautifully. Not much leverage at all, not much equity, I should say, into the real estate at all. And you flipped it, and if you put $100,000 down and you made $100,000, in the old days, that's 100% return on your money, and oftentimes that was within months. That's what that last decade was. Was this a great country or what? But whether it was buyer A or buyer B or buyer C, what was true about everybody was at the time of closing, there was only 20% that the developer could tap into as leverage to cause the buyer to close. And given the disaster of 2008, nobody showed up for closing. Massive defaults. Massive. All right, let's fast forward, because I still can't believe this story was written. And when I read it, I had to read it 2 or 3 times, not because I didn't go to college, because I couldn't believe what I was reading. This decade, it seems to me, Nettie, we had to get 50% down before closing. And even, you got to admit, right, Frenchie, how many people defaulted with 50% down? Nobody. I don't want to read the first paragraph and waste your time again. This has nothing to do with what's going on in this particular cycle. In this particular cycle, I can tell you this as a fact of life. There is no more equity. There is the amount of equity in residential real estate in all of South Florida has never been as rich as it is today, ever. 50% down, like 0 defaults, maybe 1 or 2%. I think PMG had, out of 800 condos they developed, like 2 or 3 people didn't close with 50% down. Related, 1 or 2% default. Swire, same thing, 1 or 2% default. This article is nuts, but it got written. So once again, what are they talking about? They're also referencing this thing that you've been hearing a lot about lately called the negative yield curve. Oh, this is a lovely thing. We're real estate brokers. We're not Wall Street people, but yet we have to deal with the negative yield curve. What does that mean? Because you're hearing about it. Here's what it means for those of you that trade in bonds. You know that the 10-year bond is now trading for less money than the 2-year bond, which that's called negative yield. And when that happens, supposedly in the last 50, 60 years, every time that happens, the U.S. hits a recession. Ew. So the party's over. Ooh. No, it's not. It's not ooh. It's not any of that stuff. But it is a tea leaf sign that there's an adjustment of the economy coming. It also means investors aren't willing to buy 10-year bonds because they don't believe in 10-year future at the moment. They'll buy 2 years. All right, that's what you know. What you may not know is that the 10-year bond and mortgage rates are linked. When the 10-year bond interest rate goes down, so do mortgage rates. So when you're in a negative yield curve environment, realtor, it's not a bad thing for realtors. So I'm going to ask Raquel Kaplan a common sense question. If mortgage rates go down, do more or less people go out looking for real estate? More. Sandra, if more people are out there looking for real estate, are more or less sales made? More. Nellie, if more sales are being made, are prices liable to go this way or that way? Exactly. Negative yield curve, bring it on, baby. I'll show you in my presentation that a year ago, most mortgage lenders were predicting that by now, a year ago, that by now, we would be seeing 30-year fixed rate loans just over 5%. Just over 5. Well, it's actually just under 4. Because they didn't even see the effect of the 10-year bond vis-a-vis mortgage rates like we are now. And now the experts are saying it could be around 3 by the end of the year, or certainly by this time next year. And if when we do hit 3, just to save time, it's a historical low for mortgage rates in the United States. So if Raquel's right, and if mortgage rates go down, more people come out to buy or look at real estate. And Sandra's right, because it doesn't make sense. If more people are coming out to buy, more than likely more sales are going to be made. And Nellie's right, because if more sales are made, more than likely there's less availability to buy. And next thing you know, prices probably start to feel a pinch to go up. That's the effect of this negative yield curve. So relax on that one, okay? This was this morning. We have to deal with this stuff all the time. And the reason I'm sharing all this as background with all of you is because I learned a long time ago from Michael Goldstein's and my former mentor, Tom Daly. You can never sell anything without a sense of urgency. We've already covered that this morning. But the easiest way to create a sense of urgency is to create a sense of scarcity. If you exhale, your next breath, I promise you, is an inhale. If you can automatically create an argument for scarcity, that 3-bedroom apartment that you want at the estates at Acqualina, the one that faces north looking at Golden Beach, there's only one left in that entire line. Scarcity. By the way, it may not be true, but that's what Michael told me to say, okay? That's scarcity. And when you create scarcity, if you're a real buyer, you're automatically feeling the urgency. But how do you create scarcity when the Real Deal writes stories like this? And how do you create scarcity when the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times likes to jump on the bandwagon? And I'll show you what I mean. So here's an update of the Miami report. This is a little bit about us. Let me move on. This is a history of this, a potpourri of some of the covers of the Miami report. So just real quickly, 2009, the year after 2008, we didn't know what the hell we were going to do. The New York Times and CNN. What's this? CNN? Love this place. Love that place. They wrote a story. They each wrote a story that said Miami had 25,000 defaulted condos for sale in 2009, which was equal to 10 years of inventory. There's no way, Lana. You're good. There's no way you're creating a sense of urgency with a headline like that from CNN and the New York Times. Take out the white flag. Friggin' surrender. There's no way that you can defeat that. I don't care how good you are. And that's what we all said to each other in ISG in 2009. But then we said, wait a minute. That doesn't make common sense. We live here. There's no friggin' way there's 25,000 condos of defaulted inventory for sale. It just doesn't make any sense. So we literally went out, because the choice was we either disprove the New York Times and CNN or we close, because I don't know how we're going to keep making the rent payment and payroll every 2 weeks. 10 years of inventory, no urgency. We're dead. I mean, everybody is. But then again, we never saw an 08 before. So we were staring at circumstances we had never imagined we would ever see. So we weren't alone. But what we did go, and we went out, and we counted everything. Everything. The conclusion was 11,502 units, not 25,000. And we put it all in this report in September of 2009, literally 10 years ago. Our first one. A year later, the 11th, and we stuck our chin out, ISG. We think CNN's wrong. It's not 10 years. We think it's 5 years of inventory. So we said 5 years, 11,000 units. In 2 years, it was all gone. In 2 years, 11,502 units got sucked up by Venezuela, by Argentina, by Brazil, a little bit of Mexico, but those were the main countries, Venezuela, Argentina, and Brazil. All cash in 2 years, gone. I made myself a promise then, and Veronica Gorson, who's sitting here, my new partner in the front row, she knows, she's heard me say it a million times, I have never, ever lost my belief, my faith in the resiliency of Miami since that occurrence. People love this town. We are selling real estate in what is really a brand. You mentioned, Lana, you and your husband just got back from this beautiful European vacation. And when people asked you, where do you live? You said Miami. I'm sure you told them the truth. And what was the reaction like?
Wow.
Like every single time. Eyes lit up, smiles get big. You don't know if they're really jealous towards you or they're really happy for you. But either way, we live in a brand. We live in this most amazing city that has this feeling of making everybody feel alive. It just puts a smile on people's faces right away. And feeling alive is different for a 20-year-old compared to a 40-year-old, compared to a 60-year-old, compared to an 80-year-old. But nevertheless, being alive is being alive. I played golf with my son over a year ago in August and in Ireland. And every day we got hooked up with two strange people because golf is played with four people. Hi, who are you? Who are you? Who are you? My son lives in New York. Oh, very nice. He's a Wall Street guy. Oh, even nicer. Dad, where do you live? That would be me. Miami. And the conversations always became not only super happy. I met people from all over the world that know more about restaurant openings in Miami than I do, and I live here. And I know you've all had that same experience. It was really nailed into me in 2010, 2011. When I saw those 11,000 units go bye-bye, I realized the international and even domestic popularity of Miami has no boundaries. CNN was so wrong. Real Deal was so wrong this morning. But we have to defeat this because this is part of what creates the lack of urgency or the lethargy in the minds of the buyers. They just don't know what's going on out there. And part of the reason we produce this and share with the real estate community is so that we can more or less kind of tell the same story based on facts, not based on cocktail, party, gossip, conjecture. So we produced the first one in 2009. We did an update in 10. We did an update in 11. And now Veronica and I find ourselves every year publishing the Miami Report with updates that we share with the real estate industry. It's now published in Spanish, in Portuguese, Mandarin, English. There's like 10,000 copies that are made. We work hard on this. We share it with all of you. I use it as a listing tool to get business from Cervera and Fortune and Douglas Elliman. This is how I compete. Yes, I do. I use it for that reason. But I mostly use it to sell my listings. And what I'm doing, sharing it with you now so you can sell yours. Because the faster you sell, the faster I sell, the faster Jules Trump will build another building that we can all make some money on. Follow that bouncing ball? So this particular issue we're calling supply shock. Now, I have the privilege, I guess, of presenting this thing a lot this summer. I've been to Sao Paulo twice this year, Mexico City a couple of times, New York, presenting this, and every time it's a shock. And why is it a shock? Probably because of the articles that are written like The Real Deal this morning. They're not right. They're exaggerated, and they're always exaggerated for the worst. If it bleeds, it leads. You know, nobody likes to talk about couples that get married, but they love to talk about couples that are getting divorced. They love to talk about the dark side of life always. That's what the press is. Except there's nothing dark about what's going on in Miami, and yet it affects the mindset of the buyers, which takes away urgency, because articles like that kills even the idea of scarcity. Prices are going to go down. If prices are going to go down because we're going to hit a recession, it probably means there's a lot of inventory out there. So what we can do is at least change that conversation. This, I think you'll agree by the time I finish, you'll understand why we're dealing with a supply shock problem. In other words, we don't have enough of it. And I think the faster we can get that message out to the buying public, particularly this coming season, Michael's going to have more months where, well, I don't know, 30 million in sales a month is a lot. I think you just raised the expectations with Mr. Trump significantly. But you just might, well, all of us, if we can get the mindset of the people that are coming to Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Palm Beach thinking about buying real estate grounded in the facts. Here's the Wall Street Journal in June. Roughly 20,000 new construction units have been planned in the Miami area since the last downturn. That's not what we said at all. My older brother called me from Dallas, Texas and said, hey, congratulations, you're in the Wall Street Journal today. I said, thanks a lot. Did you read the friggin' story? Because that's not what our Miami report said at all. Our Miami report said that 19,868 units have been developed. We never said planned. We never said planned. Have been developed from Coconut Grove to Fort Lauderdale in this last cycle. This last cycle began in early 2012. That's what the report said. And 90% of them are currently sold. We didn't say that. We didn't say that at all. But if your buyers are reading that, what do you think they think? It's automatic that they would assume there's a lot of supply. There certainly is no lack of scarcity. The facts say there's a genuine scarcity of inventory. Headlines like that kill you. Who's more credible, me or the Wall Street Journal? We got a problem. because it ain't me. So pay attention to these four numbers, because in about 15 minutes, it'll be crystal clear to all of you. 1921, Wall Street Journal. That's what's left now from the 20,000 condos that got developed since 2012. Yeah, there's 1,921 brand new developer units that you can move into, including the estates at Acqualina, between Coconut Grove and Fort Lauderdale. And when you slice and dice 1,921 units by all these different neighborhoods, it's like zero. It's like zero. 2020, that would be next year. That would be 4 months from now. That would be the, imagine that, Christmas is 4 months away, 3.5 months away. That would be the year that most developers, Jules Trump got ahead of everybody with the estates at Acqualina, but that's when most would like to start their pre-sale campaigns to begin the next cycle. And I'll talk about what that next cycle means in terms of new inventory for Seth Kalpin and I to buy a condo that we can maybe one day rent out. It's going to be a long time. It's going to be a long time. Oh, I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself. 2025 is the year that most of those buildings might get delivered. And 902, without the South American market, because we're dealing with a high dollar environment, this is what we've been relying on, and this is what we've been making our money on. 902 is the daily population growth of the state of Florida. The good news about this is I think that we were the first ones to talk about this 6 or 7 years ago in the Miami report. Now I see it mentioned all the time. Happy to see it because it adds credibility to everything that we've been saying. I think it's also fair, Sandra, I want to pick on you again. If population is dropping in any given state or city, is it fair to assume that prices are going to go down or up? If it's dropping, probably down. If population is booming in a certain town, is it fair to assume the prices might go up or down? And this fact by itself, I don't think it's hyped enough. Fastest growing state in the United States is Texas, 1,100 people a day. Number 2 is us, Florida. And number 3, a distant number 3, is California, growing at 300 people a day. And I'm going to show you how the trends have shifted significantly in a couple of minutes, and why even if in a high dollar environment, you can put your hand on the pillow and relax. Buyers are coming to Florida. They all are looking for a roof over their heads. They're coming here for a variety of reasons. Domestically alone, that's the number. And this means your second home buyers are not included. This means your investors are not included. These are only people that, like me, that moved here 30 years ago. I surrendered my New Jersey driver's license. They gave me the Florida driver's license. This is my permanent home. I'm part of 902. But if you have a rich relative or you just sold somebody from Argentina or from New York City a second home, they're not included in there. And I have a feeling that most of us in this room, at least 1/3 of our sales every year are second homes. So imagine the strength of the demand curve in Florida, despite the fact that we don't have South America like we used to because of the high dollar. Marry that with a shortage of supply, I think you're seeing where I'm going, or where the Miami report likes to take you. So here we go. We just covered this. 90% of 19,868, call it 20,000 units, are gone. 1,921. This number was 2,101 just 4 months ago. Little by little by little. 60 million in sales helps a lot. But even at Brickell City Center, I think we sold since April about 20 units over a period of like 3 or 4 months. Every project sells 1 or 2, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 every single month, and it starts to continue to drop. You'll see that we believe that this number here is no more than about 18 months of inventory, with the possible exception of some of these condos that are trading for north of $4 and $5 million bucks. They may take some time, but otherwise, it's selling quickly. EWM. The manager of that office is Michael Goldstein's friend, Ron Sheffield. And Ron Sheffield likes to write stories about all this inventory, the complete opposite of scarcity, complete opposite. And the reason he does it mostly is to convince his sellers to lower their prices because he wants to sell his listings quickly. EWM doesn't manage project sales. It's all general real estate. Look at this. Inventory in the 1 million plus condo market represents a 55 month supply at its current pace. Complete rubbish. Complete. I've had to completely tear this thing apart on behalf of Swire, and I'm prepared to submit my report later this afternoon. I can tell you that under $2 million, any real estate that's under $2 million has no more than 12 months, 18 months of shelf life out there. I don't care if it's a house. I don't care if it's a condo. That's based on the numbers in the last 3 years. From 3 to 4 million, you've got about 2 years, 2.5 years. That's it. When you want to talk about 5 million plus, go for it. But to lump all of it into 55 months of supply, your buyers read that. Urgency is killed. So part of what we have to do is combat that, at least with both your buyers and some of your co-brokers, with the real facts of the real supply, so they snap out of this lethargy and get real about the fact that we are really truly moving into a scarce supply market, which automatically creates urgency. But nevertheless, those are the things we have to deal with. Here's the real absorption. Now, we talked about this, 19,868. Call that 20,000 units. Want to see how they disappeared? Up until January of 17, they sold quite nicely. We were down to 5,200 units. Now remember, the dollar was weak in 12, in 13, in 14, and in 15. It started to go up in 2016. It hit its meteoric high. Actually, it's hit it now. I thought it hit its high last year. But there's this trade war going on now between China and the United States, and it's caused the US dollar to soar in value. I promise you that it is my hope of hopes that this is truly temporary, because we need South America, as we all know, to augment our sales. We all know that. There are political winds going on in South America that supersede the currency issue, which we'll touch on, especially with respect to Mexico and Argentina. But nevertheless, without South America, you have to rely on that domestic demand. The bigger point is this. How's this? The slowest 3 years of condo sales that Miami's had in the last 30 years is 2016, 17, and 18. The 3 slowest years. And why is that? Well, we're dealing with low unemployment, and we're dealing with really low mortgage rates. So can someone, and we were dealing with a really good economy. We weren't in some negative yield curve environment. So I wonder why. It's got to be the dollar. The high dollar makes Miami real estate too expensive for South Americans. And any of you that have ever traveled to South America know perfectly well, it's the easiest sale in the world. Selling a piece of real estate to anybody in South America is the easiest sale in the world, but for the high dollar. It stops them dead in their tracks. People with money have money because they manage their money well. And they're not going to trade Brazilian reais or Argentine pesos just because you've got a great deal on that 3-bedroom corner apartment at the estates at Acqualina in the last one facing north. Sorry, it won't work if you're only going with just that. If you're going with some of this information, it might work. But if it's just because it's the last unit and the real, which I woke up this morning, it's nearly 4.1 against the dollar, sorry, it's not going to work. Unless you can begin to explain some of this. So look what happened. We lost South America right around here. Somehow we tripped our way down to 5,100 units in January of 17. In January of 18, there were 3,800 developer units. Coconut Grove to Fort Lauderdale, this is all east of 95. See how it's going down? This is all unsold inventory. By January of this year, that dropped to 2,498. Now you're at 1,921. 1,921 unsold developer units. What's not included in there is 60 million in 60 days. That number now is probably just under 1,900, to be real. But look at that number, 1,230. I asked our research department, so what's been the average absorption in 2016, 17, 18, and half of 19? This is not ISG sales, this is everybody's. Because of my relationship with Related, because we have this Related ISG company, I get all Related sales reports, all of them. We get all, obviously we have Swire's reports, we have PMG's reports. Terra Development, David Martin sends me his sales reports because he doesn't want us to misquote his sales information in the Miami report. I get everybody's sales reports, I'm not guessing. I'm telling you, these are the real sales that are going on everywhere from every single developer, with the only exception being what's happened here at the estates at Acqualina in the last 60 days. So we've been averaging 1,230 units a year, 1,230 units without South America, and you have 1,921 units remaining to be sold. Mike Ambrosio's here. He's the president of ISG and a CPA, and he'll very quickly tell you that's 1.5 years of supply in all price points, 1.5. That's it. That's it. And then we're sold out. Then you're sold out. We're projecting this out to the end of well, they've got this out to the end of 2021. I can tell you that by this time next year, that number is below 500. And in South Florida, that's like 0. So what choice And do you think I'm making an argument for scarcity? I'm just warming up. Because when we finish selling this stuff, we real estate brokers that are loving these 6% commissions that developers are paying, the great fear that we're going to have is we're going to be in MLS land chewing on 3% for a long time. For a long time. And your buyers, if all of this stuff is gone and the only place they can fish for real estate is MLS, now you're dealing with a really tight market because there's no developer supply. What happened at the end of 2011 shocked everybody. All of that inventory that CNN and the New York Times said would still be for sale for 10 years was all gone. And every single developer in town, including Jules Trump, jumped back into the water and started developing. Developed the mansions of Acqualina, where we are right now. A spectacular building. PMG got busy, Related got busy, Swire got busy. Everybody got busy again because there was no developer inventory. And I'm telling you that by this time next year, when this number is less than 500, they're all going to want to start jumping in again and starting pre-construction. Except there's a problem. And this is where the problem reveals itself. You as an agent, you're having a hard time convincing the Brazilian or the Argentine or the Mexican or the Colombian because the dollar's so high. I know I sound like a broken record, but we're all dealing with that every single day, are we not? And we are. And they love Miami, and they know this is a great place to park money. This is not just Miami in South America. The other name for Miami is Plan B. That's what we are. When the wheels fall off down there, we're the safe place they park their money. But look what's happened to the developers as a result of the high dollar. And we all know how the financing works here. You have to sell every developer, with the exception of Jules Trump. There are some developers in town like Jules Trump, like Swire, that are not necessarily held to traditional underwriting guidelines. But most, like PMG, like Related for sure, you have to sell 50 to 60% of the units before there's a groundbreaking, right? Well, who likes to buy pre-construction? Americans or South Americans? Let me help you, it's not Americans. South Americans love it. You're getting price level 1. You get to pay slowly. You can pay in monthly installments, which keeps you under the radar of whoever you're trying to hide all these money transfers from down in South America. We understand in Miami how that game is played. Americans, it's hard to convince Mike Ambrosia to buy pre-construction, but he'll buy when you're under construction, and he'll certainly buy when you're finished. I don't know. I think it's because Americans are so used to immediate gratification. If you're asking me to buy pre-construction, I got to wait how long? No. What do you have that I can move into like in 2 months or 6 months? Okay, that's why Americans tend to shy towards the stuff that's under, not the pre-construction. But because of the underwriting guidelines and because we have a high dollar, look what's happened to pre-construction. This year, we think we're going to break ground on 4 projects. 57 Ocean, they did break down on Miami Beach. Una, they started demolition down on Brickell. Smart Brickell, they started demolition down on Brickell. And Yotel Pad in downtown Miami. 4. I can tell you that in South Florida, that's like 0. That's nothing here. We need thousands of units to match demand. These are hundreds. Ocon Tower is the only one we can think of that might, with the exception of the estates at Acqualina, that might break ground next year. My money's on the estates. A lot of us have serious doubts whether Mr. Ocon will really be able to break ground next year in downtown Miami. Now, why is that? I just talked about it. You can't get the money out of South America in a high dollar environment, so consequently, the supply chain is choked. We're dealing with very little standing inventory remaining from developers, and you got nothing in the pipeline. Now, here is where this is where you got to please lean in and listen to me on this one. When I first moved here, and a developer hired ISG, a high-rise building was like 20 to 25 stories. They put 100 units in a building like that. The life cycle was 3 years. It took us 1 year to get the pre-sale requirement, 50%, and 2 years for the builder to build. That's what it was. So the entire life cycle of a building was 3 years. Well, when was the last time we built a brand new building of 20 stories? PMG, the developer of Muse, that Raquel Kaufman and Sandra are selling, they want to build a Waldorf Astoria in downtown Miami. It's 100 stories. That's as tall as the Empire State Building. How tall is the estates, Michael?
673 feet.
So in the old days, that's close to 70 stories. Okay? We're not building 20 stories anymore. Swire wants to build a building in downtown Miami on 7th and Brickell, 85 stories. You're getting the point. So if they hired me and said, Craig, we want you to ISG to start the pre-sales tomorrow. Call that 2020. Call that next year. You got to give me 2 years to reach the pre-sale. I'm not doing this in a year anymore because we're putting too many units in there It's not 100 units, it's 300 units, it's 400 units. It's a lot of units. So you got to give me at least 2 years to reach the pre-sale. Then you got to give the developers at least 3 years to build those buildings. It took, your building 65 stories, it took PMG 3 years to build that building. I'm saying that I'm giving every developer the benefit of the doubt that it won't take any longer than that. But if it does, then that drifts off to 2026. Folks, this is the takeaway from all of this data. We're not going to have any brand new significant inventory for people to move into until the year 2026 or 2025, somewhere in there. That's 6 to 7 years from now. Does that begin to change the conversation about urgency? When the Real Deal writes stories like this, or the Wall Street Journal says there's 20,000 units planned, no, there's not. There's less than 2,000 developer units for sale, and there's nothing in the pipeline in the form of supply for people that they actually can move into meaningful numbers for 5 or 6 years from now, maybe 6 or 7 years from now. Is that because developers don't want to build? No! It's because of the underwriting guidelines imposed by the commercial banks, construction lenders, and the impact of the high US dollar. It just didn't affect your ability to close business. It affected a developer's ability to continue with the supply pipeline. In 30 years, I've never seen anything like this. In all the years I've owned ISG, there's always been this nice little life cycle of condos. Some are in pre-sale mode, some are under construction, some are getting ready to deliver, and more coming. The life cycle just kept going and going and going until now. And now we have a problem. And this is part of the reason we call this supply shock. The resale market, a lot of confusion out there as well, Ron Sheffield. So let me take a stab at it for you. These are condos. In April of 19, every single price point in Miami-Dade County and Broward, every price point. There were roughly 21,000 condos in MLS. By the end of August, there were 19,500. But here's what's happened. 9,500 condos got added to MLS between April and August. 11,000 got sold, leaving a negative difference of 1,400. We're telling you that that's 18 to 24 months of inventory because we know more inventory is going to be added. And we also know more inventory is going to be sold. And we think that part of the reason we're going to see acceleration of sales, and I'm learning most of this from Alex Vidal and my colleagues at Related ISG, is because we're dealing with 902 people a day moving to Florida, and we're dealing with a falling mortgage rate environment. Mortgage money is becoming plentiful, it's becoming cheap, and and people are moving to Florida for a variety of reasons, including tax refugees, which we all know about, and they're mostly, and if they're millennials, they're buying houses before they're buying condos. The houses are even more ridiculous. Here's the houses. In April of 19, there were 13,000 for sale. Today, there's 11,400. You can see what happened between April and August. 13,000 were added, 14,000 got sold. Another 12 to 18 months of inventory. Then, and when all that inventory is sold, there'll be others that will replace it naturally. At what price? If we're dealing with a population boom and falling mortgage rate environment, at what price? You can start to create the conversation of urgency if you're grounded in more facts. I did this presentation last week in Mexico City twice, and I promise you people were floored about the lack of inventory, the lack of choices they currently have in Miami. I tell everybody, if you want to buy the condo of your dreams, you got 1 year. You got 1 year. Because when all these developers realize that there's not even much in developer land, they're going to take away some of the incentives that they're currently offering. Big bonus commissions to the brokers. Down at Brickell City Center, we're paying condo fees like forever. But that'll all be gone once the developers realize we've reached the point where it's no longer necessary. Because in most cases, developer inventory is priced less money than MLS. Less money than MLS. What a time for somebody to buy a condo, particularly from a developer. Particularly, my opinion, you've got 1 year. We touched on this, and then we're almost finished. And last November, experts predicted 30-year rates around 5.5%. Today, you're at 3.6. They didn't see the effect of the 10-year bond a year ago, the experts. I'm not an expert at it. I'm just reporting the news. But if Nellie's right, you have cheap mortgage money, more people coming out to buy real estate, that's going to cause two things to happen. Supply will shrink even more, and you can expect some upward pressure on pricing. Pricing will start to go up again. It will start to go up again. Except here's what's happening now. Mortgage rates today are, well, by the end of this year, they're expected to be at 3.37. The record low was 3 in 15. Expected to drop even further. This morning, Donald Trump was quoted in the Wall Street Journal asking the Fed to lower interest rates. He wants to see 0 interest rates. 0. To stimulate the economy. How crazy is he? The country of Denmark just issued 30-year fixed-rate loans at 0% mortgage rates. How crazy is Trump? Maybe he's onto something. The negative yield curve in Europe actually is in negative territory. So it sort of makes sense that mortgages would be somewhere between 0 to 1% in Europe. It's free money. You're crazy not to buy. You're crazy not to buy because inflation is. Inflation is what makes real estate such a great investment because it's the ultimate hedge against inflation. But at 0%, that's free money. Is Trump nuts? He might be onto something. You think 3.3% is cheap? You think 3% is cheaper? Stay tuned. If there's any lack of urgency to buy, it's probably because mortgage rates are going to continue to drop. Maybe I'm better off waiting until mortgage rates hit 2.5%. Maybe you should. That house you want won't be available, but there'll be other houses on the street. A 3-bedroom, corner balcony at the estates at Acqualina on the 30th floor won't be around, but the 15th floor will. If you wait for mortgage rates. Urgency, scarcity, scarcity, urgency. They go hand in hand. But you can't create scarcity if you don't know the facts. And so what we try to do is share with you these facts. Demand, we all know about Peter Zalewski. Now my friend Ron Sheffield, God, he's the new Peter. And actually he's a much smarter broker than Peter ever was. But for some reason...
Talk to us?
Huh? No, God. Michael and I are going to sponsor Ron Sheffield's duck tours, his real estate duck tours. But very few of these guys ever talk about demand. And we took a shot at it. I'm sharing with you our findings because it's the other half of the coin. I can stand up here for another 3 hours and bore the hell out of you about supply analysis. Hopefully you've gotten the point so far. We don't have anything in the pipeline in the form of developer inventory because of the effect of the high dollar. We are running out of developer inventory. You now have less than 2,000 units for sale. And if we're averaging 1,200 sales a year, that's a year and a half, guys. That's all you have left. In the slowest years in the history of Miami, we're selling 1,200 units a year. What happens if the market were to pick up and we start doing 1,500 units a year? Then you have less than 18 months. That's what it means. And then you're in MLS land for 5 or 6 years. Okay, that's one half of the coin. Let's turn the coin over. Who's buying this stuff? Well, this is where we get into population trend. 20 years ago, take a look at this real quickly. The fastest growing state in the U.S. was California, 1,380 people a day, followed by Texas at 884, followed by Florida. Look at New York, plus 580 people every day 20 years ago. Fast forward, 20 years later, like the Instagram contest, not 10 years, it's 20 years. 20 years later, California slips from 1,380 a day to 342. Texas grows from 884 to 1,000. Florida grows from 800 and something to 902. But look at New York, minus 132 people a day. Measured by the U.S. Census Bureau, not to bore you, but here's how it goes. They take births, they subtract deaths, they add people moving in, they subtract people moving out. And all that equals X. So X last year for Texas was plus 1,000, for Florida plus 900, for California it dropped a lot to plus 3, but New York minus 132, and this year it's supposed to double. You could be looking at close to negative 300 people a day in New York. See Illinois, they're projecting that number to double. Connecticut, who knows, but New Jersey will be in red territory this year as well, which means people are moving out. And if people are moving out of an area, can you expect prices to drop or fall? Trust me, in New York, they're scared to death about prices because they've absolutely plateaued. I answered it for you. I was just up there a couple weeks ago vacationing with my son and daughter. My daughter works for Compass in New York, so I get all the nuclear secrets from Compass from her because she's a bit of a chatty Cathy and I like to ask questions. And I can tell you that their biggest concern right now is our prices. There's no reason for them to go up. It's total stagflation up there. And it's not a surprise to them anymore that New York is losing population. They were ranked 50 out of 50 states last year. They were dead last, New York. And why? Well, you can call them tax refugees if you like. They can't deduct state and local taxes for federal income taxes anymore, and it's gotten expensive to live up there in New York, in New Jersey, in Connecticut, in Illinois, which cradles Chicago, in Massachusetts, soon Rhode Island. It's as if the population of the United States, if you drew a horizontal line across the country, we're now 325 million people. We're heading to 400 million people in 30 years. Nothing's stopping that. Nothing. Where are they going? It's as if the country, from the middle of the country, has flatlined. Up north, they're not growing very much. They're kind of flatlined. But the South, they used to call it the big three: California, Texas, and Florida. Now the demographers are calling it the big two, because California's dropped off so much. That's a combination. There's not that many people moving into California anymore. And there's a lot of people moving out. That's what's affected that number. A lot of it has to do with the fact that it's expensive to live there. A lot of it has to do with the natural disasters, fires, and earthquakes, and stuff like that. I know, because I've sold some people this year from Los Angeles, and I've heard from them. It's not just the cost of living there. It's expensive. Natural disasters have them very, very concerned. If this trend continues, and the U.S. Census give you some peace of mind, the U.S. Census is telling all of us that the state of Florida can expect continued population growth, domestic organic growth, between 900 to 1,000 people a day for the next 20 years. 20 years. Well, that's part of demand. Yeah, well, a little bit. Because you didn't know that when you got up this morning, but you're unbelievably pissed off about the traffic conditions on 95. And it's not going to get any better, because when people come here, they come here with cars. They didn't think about Grand Central Station 120 years ago when they created Miami. They thought about hopefully getting air conditioning one day. We have people moving here every single day. I mean, this is how it affects South Florida. 25% of that 902 just comes to Miami-Dade. That's 200 to 220 people every single day, yesterday, today, tomorrow, and they all come with cars. So when you see traffic on 95, 595, Collins Avenue here, by the way, the reason you have traffic on Collins Avenue in Sunny Isles is mostly to do with the construction of the condos. I live here, I know. The second has to do with a lot of the hotel guests or people just driving through Collins Avenue, because as a resident of Sunny Isles, after 9, 10 o'clock at night, it's lovely living here. There's not that many people driving on Collins Avenue, because those are the people that actually live in Sunny Isles Beach. But the other 45% of the 902, yeah, they're on the major highways and byways, and they're just going to keep coming. They're going to keep coming. About a year ago, I'm in Bogota, Colombia. And I asked the people in Bogota, how many people here have any idea what the population of Metro Bogota is? I happened to read it. I Googled it on the plane ride down. It's the only reason I knew. I'm not, huh?
9 million?
Close. It's 8.5 million. Most people guess between 4 and 5 million. I said, okay, good. I did that to sort of set them up for the wrong answer on Miami. I then moved to Sao Paulo, Brazil. The population of Metro Sao Paulo is around 21 million. You might have known that. The population of Metro Mexico City is close to 23 million people. I was there last week. It's really ridiculous. Population of Metro New York, counting all 5 boroughs, around 13, 14 million. Population of Miami-Dade County, Miss Colombia. ¿Qué piensas?
0.2?
Not bad. Who are you, by the way? There was a lady in Bogota that guessed 10 million. I said, whoa, that's way high. It's 2.6 million. We live in the smallest big city in the world. Miami's got this gigantic frigging reputation. Makes people feel happy, makes you feel alive, makes you feel sexy, makes you feel thin, makes you feel rich, makes you feel whatever. Miami makes you feel something good. And there's only 2.5 million of us living here. So when I tell you that it's growing by 225 people a day, lots of cars, 95, this isn't going to get any better, because it's a very attractive place for people to want to move to. By a show of hands, you'll love this one, Michael. How many people in this room were born and raised in Miami? It's always the same. It's like Goldstein and Studnicky, New York and New Jersey. New Jersey over there as well. Veronica didn't raise her hand, but she was born and raised here. She's almost embarrassed to, because she'd be one of the 3. You all came here for a reason. My case 30 years ago. People are coming here for the same reasons every single day. It's Miami. It's South Florida. That's demand. That's part of demand. The other part of demand is what we call international. Mexico. I mean, I know Michael's drilling for business in Mexico, because every time I've seen Michael here, he's always with a Mexican broker, and he's doing the right thing. Every single room I went to last week to do a little Miami report thing, it was packed. I promise you the rooms were not packed to listen to Craig talk about the Miami report. They were there listening to immigration lawyers. How do I create an LLC? Was there a big deal wiring money from Mexico to the United States? Is there any problem in the Trump world? They're moving money. They're moving money. That's no question. Are they buying the estates at Acqualina? Are they buying Muse? Are they buying Brickell City? I don't know what they're buying, but they're definitely have to get their money out because the current president, Lopez Obrador, is a socialist. And despite the obnoxious difference between the delta between the Mexican peso and the US dollar, the smart money doesn't care. They're getting out now because the delta is going to get even bigger. If the US dollar remains high, it's going to get even more expensive a year from now for Mexicans to buy. They have to get their money out because they're nervous about this president. Some in Mexico call him the next Hugo Chavez. I think that's a gross exaggeration, but they're saying it, and it just adds to the fuel of the motivation behind the Mexicans. Now, for all of us realtors, you didn't have this market a year ago. Neither did I. You didn't have Mexico. You didn't have anybody in South America. You were relying on strictly the domestic market, and you were hearing that these people from New York are paying a lot of money in taxes because of some tax reform, and you were hoping to get some of those people. Actually, now you are. Not a year ago. I know, because I'm right with you on the front lines, and I'm trying just as hard as you all are. I'm lighting candles. I've got crystals. I have an astrologer now. I'm doing everything you all are doing. And there were no New Yorkers last year, and I'm from there. But there are now. There are now. Canadians too. But Mexicans, for sure. I expected Colombia, because last year they had a presidential election, and a guy named Mr. Petro got 45% of the vote. Petro's a socialist. He scared the hell out of Colombians. But he didn't win. A guy named Duque won. He's more of a centrist, right? Not very popular because he's taxing the hell out of people with money in Colombia are getting taxed to death, to death, to death. But it's not affected the needle. There's not that many Colombians buying, and they're blaming it all on the delta between the dollar and the Colombian peso. Let's go to Brazil. Brazil has a new president, President Bolsonaro. He's like a cousin of Donald Trump. He's not a primo. He's kind of like a cousin. He is so far to the right. Brazil is not a country, I was there a month ago and I learned this in spades. It's not a country that will respond necessarily to political wins. No, that's not going to do it. It's their economy. When their economy gets stronger, and it's expected to get significantly stronger next year, that's when the real naturally gets stronger against the dollar. That's when Brazilians start feeling psychologically better, and that's when you'll get Brazilians buying Miami. My opinion, it's a 2020 thing. But in my opinion, you got to stay on top of it and keep your eye on it. The worst 3 years for Florida condo sales were 2016, 17, and 18. The worst 2 years for the economy of Brazil in the last 60 years were the mid-70s, when they transferred the government from military rule to what they call now democracy. The 2 years that followed that transition were the worst two horrific years, economically speaking, in the history of Brazil, in the mid-70s. The next two worst years for Brazil were 2017 and 18. You want to know why you didn't get any business out of Brazil? Their GDP was in negative territory. They weren't doing anything. Yeah, we flew down there, cocktail parties, nice hotels, fantastic champagne, and it was a waste because they didn't have the head for it, let alone the money. But they're all saying, give us next year. And we're going to start feeling a whole lot better, mostly because of mostly because of the economy. Argentina. Look, next month is their presidential election. It looks very likely that Cristina Kirchner's political party is going to run the affairs of Argentina for the next, is it 4 years or 6 years? The president, 4 years. They had a runoff election a few Sundays ago, and the die was cast. I've contacted so many of my Argentine friends, and there's no urgency out there. I think they're waiting for the Hail Mary pass. Something's going to happen in October, and President Macri, the incumbent's going to win, and everything's going to be fine. Okay, so I think we got to wait till October. But come October, when the reality does set in, despite the difference between the Argentine peso and the US dollar, you can expect some business from Argentina. Once again, that's after next month. Those are the international markets. You didn't have the potential of Argentina a year ago. You didn't have Mexico a year ago. And you didn't have the Northeast like you have them today. So I think that the night Frank picked all this up, just before Veronica and I sent this thing to the printer in April, Knight Frank came out with their 2019 World Report. Now, Knight Frank puts this together with Citibank for Citibank's high net worth individuals that are measured having net worth of $30 million or more. Got it? So if you're worth $30 million one day, Carolina, when you're worth $30 million, and if you have your money with Citibank, you're going to get a complimentary issue every year of Knight Frank. And hopefully in that complimentary issue, you're going to read some wonderful things about the city you call home, Miami. But this year, I read this thing. It's this thick. There's a lot of data in the Knight Frank report that's in our Miami report. There's a whole bunch of data that's not in there, like education, like the impact of the airports, the impact on cultural affairs in Florida, the impact of the fast-growing tech savvy center, and why it's so attractive to millennials in the state of Florida. It's a lot of stuff that goes in the Knight Frank report. But their conclusion this year is that Miami is the #1 fastest growing real estate market in the US, #5 in the world. That's kind of impressive. Does it go to, in fact, the lack of supply that's in the pipeline? They absolutely talk about it. And they absolutely blame it on the US dollar. They got those conclusions right. They don't necessarily have the numbers nailed down, but they've got the theme of the story right. Miami's running out of inventory. Miami's going through a population boom. Developers can't develop because of the high dollar and because of the way commercial banks structure these condominiums. Oh, what is Miami going to do in 2 or 3 years? This is Knight Frank. Craig Studnicky interprets that as just another realtor in the room saying in 2 or 3 years, prices are going to go nuts. They have to. You're going to be dealing with low mortgages, a population boom, no supply, and God willing, a return of some of these markets in South America, whether it's because the dollar finally devalued a little bit or the politics of Argentina, Mexico go to the left, perhaps even followed by Colombia in 2 years. If those markets jump in, because now they're not here like they were in 2012, 13, and 14. So close your eyes and try to imagine Miami with those markets again. I don't think we're going to see Venezuela for a long time, but that's one country in South America. We're talking about a continent. If you see Mexico, and they're buying now, if you see Argentina, and they're not buying now, but I think they will, and Brazil next year, 220 million people live in that country. It's the 900-pound gorilla of South America. You add them to the Northeasterners, to 902 people a day, of which you get 45% of them every single day. You've got a strong demand curve, and you've got the capability of people being able to buy because mortgage rates are so low. But what ain't we got? We ain't got enough supply to match demand. This is pretty much my last slide. This is, our Miami report's about 80-some pages. The first half of the book deals with supply and demand, which I painstakingly go through like I just did this morning, because I think that's how we change the conversation of urgency, by talking about scarcity with real facts. We have a supply problem. A year from now, we realtors are going to be making 3% on resales. And yeah, you're going to be showing people old stuff, bad decorating. You're going to be burning through a lot of gas, because it's going to take, there's just no question about it, 5 to 6 years for most developers to be able to deliver new product. The good news about the estates, they're going to be delivering the first tower at the estates in 2021 and the second one in 22. You're going to be, you will have no competition. You might be going through what we're all going through right now, this lack of urgency out there. But in a year or two, Jules Trump and Michael Goldstein are kings on Sunny Isles Beach, because they're the only ones completing any new inventory, with the exception of Jeff Sofer at Turnberry. That's it. Everything else will be finished. Muse is finished. By December, Armani Casa is finished. Ritz-Carlton is nearly finished. Everything's going to be finished. Once it's finished, it gets sold pretty quickly. And what's coming next in Sunny Isles? What's coming next? I don't know. Jules Trump might be able to have a better answer to that than I do. I know the Gil Desert's got plans, but no one's talking about breaking ground for a while, because they want to see what they currently have sold, what they have to sell. Anyway, this slide. This is my favorite of the back of the book of the Miami report, because I think it tells an interesting story. If Florida was a country, remember the Instagram thing 10 years ago? What do you look like? What do you look like today? I didn't take it, but Florida did. If Florida was a country 10 years ago, we were the 52nd most important economy in the world. We were $1 trillion economy a few years ago. Yeah, it goes way past condos and houses. We're an economy, employing a lot of people, servicing a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. That's 10 years ago. Today, last year, 2018, if you were a country, you were in the 17th most important economy in the world. I don't know. You're pretty good on stats. Where do you think we're going to be 10 years from now?
6.
Okay, I'll take it. 6. She's been right on every number this morning. So take it to the bank. 6 it is. Imagine if you're 6. That means you're putting Florida behind China, the United States, India, California, France, Great Britain. But maybe. And if you are number 6, or if you're somewhere between 6 to 10, what does the population of Florida even look like by then? By then, I can tell you in another 10 years, you're projected to be bouncing on 30 million people. There's 40 million people that live in California. By then, you'll just be bumping the total population of Texas. But what will it also mean to the value of real estate? We're going through this luminous pause right now where we've got this lack of urgency. And I really do think a lot of it is grounded in the news from 2 years ago when we had a lot of inventory for sale. But we don't anymore. And it's going faster than people realize. My mother, may she rest in peace, she used to have this expression, Mikey's heard it 1,000 times, about life is like a roll of paper towels. The closer you get to the end, the faster it seems to go. I have a feeling that's true of real estate inventory as well. When we start to get down to just a little bit of inventory, it's remarkable how quickly it goes. I gave this presentation, April, so it's 4 months ago, to George Perez from Related. It was like the week before I did the big one at Brickell City Center. And I finished the whole thing, and this one we had like 2,200 units for sale, not 1,900. But George said something kind of profound that I missed for the first 10 seconds, and I caught it. You know, Craig, a year from now, what we know, they'll know. So I said out loud, I should have kept it to myself, who's we and who's they? I didn't know. I get a little intimidated by George. Everybody does, by the way. And he said, the real estate people, we know what's going on with supply. They are the buying public. They don't know. They read stuff from a year ago, 2 years ago. They listen to a family maven, an expert here, an expert there that don't know anything about anything, and they reach conclusions, and it causes a problem for us in the real estate industry. But a year from now, they'll know. They'll know we don't have any supply. They'll know when we realtors start showing them, no, there's not much to see at the estates, but I can show you a beautiful resale at the mansions, or a fantastic resale at Acqualina. Wait a minute, there's no more developer inventory? Oh, no, we're out. They're pretty much out. Hopefully we'll get some in a few years, a couple years, maybe a year. When that conversation is happening a year from now, they'll know. And when they know, I think Nettie De Silva's right. That's when I think you see upward pricing, pressure on pricing. The trick is to get from here to there. And in my opinion, I think you do that by creating scarcity. And you create scarcity with information like this, which is, I promise you, it's the most accurate reflection of what's out there in inventory you're going to find in Miami. This is available for all of you on our, ISG World Miami report. And we have copies in the front. I'd gladly give this away. I know some of you have been photographing some of these slides, but you can get a much better copy of this if you take it right off our website and use it. Close a deal. I have a lot of realtors that come over to me through the years and say, Craig, your Miami report helped me close a house in Miramar. Great. Congratulations. You owe me a beer. You owe me a something. But if you use it to help close whatever, at least use it to change the conversation and hopefully bring some urgency into this coming selling season. Mike Ambrosio, I'll close with this. He's a former CPA. He knows a lot of people up north are on income tax extension, which comes to an end on October 15th. So a few things are going to happen in a month. One, they're going to have to write a check to Uncle Sam that they're not expecting, and they're going to be not happy about it. Number two, the thermometer is going to start to feel a little differently, especially when the colors of the leaves start to change. And automatically, they start thinking about Florida. That's a month. So get ready to receive those tax refugees and get ready to give them the real story about what's really happening with supply. They don't have as much time as they think. They don't. Anyway, that's the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you all for listening, and thank you, Michael. Thank you.